So, Ali, how was your week?
It's been a good week, thank you, Flo. It was a busy week, but a good week. We did a dual arch case that was pretty challenging using Navident for both arches, which was really cool last week. So I'll share more about that in times to come. We've done a lot of debriefs and analysis of it, so that's been awesome. And Southern Implants announced their full lineup for their conference in South Africa in April. I'm really excited to be speaking, but I'm even more excited to see what other people are speaking about and the innovations. And Akash Maru, who I've talked about before, I'm mentoring him, has booked his flight out there.
Wow.
Yeah. And my friend Sheikha, who has the best name, anyone who knows Sheikha Buva, who is a periodontist in London, really cool. She's doing a lot of implants and she's thinking about booking a ticket. Can I tempt you to come out there with us?
I mean, I would love to, but I feel like maybe in a few years' time, I feel like some of it might be lost on me at this stage.
I think you'd be okay, but I thought you might object to the flight out there.
Well, I was going to say that. I was like, I feel like if it was something I was going to get absolutely loads from, then there's sort of a risk to the benefits ratio might be a little bit more
Fair.
outweighed. But
Yeah.
I think in a few years' time when I could be like, yes, this is 100% going to be worth it. But yeah, otherwise the air miles, a little bit too much carbon footprint for me right now.
Fair. We can go plant trees out there, but I'm thinking maybe in the next few years then, and the more people that go, like we've talked about before, to something together, the more fun it is.
Oh, definitely.
And then it was kind of bittersweet because I found out my dog Buona needs to have a couple of extractions. Yeah, bless him.
You're just going to get them out of home.
Well, so this is the thing. I brush his teeth every day. I was brushing his teeth and he let out a little yelp, and then I found a little piece of tooth on his bed, and I was thinking, what is this? It was a tooth. I should have known that. But Zara took him to the vet, and the vet said, oh, he's got a cracked tooth on either side, and we can either refer him to have an endodontic opinion. He got more options than some NHS patients. So we can refer him for an endodontic opinion, or we can take him out. And I was thinking, this guy is not going to be able to say, I mean, the things he does with his teeth, but can I just put a couple of implants in there? And there's a whole ethics thing around that. So poor Buona has to have a couple of extractions under GA.
Oh, but to be fair, one of my cats sees it. He's missing his top fangs there to be extracted.
Oh.
And he definitely has halitosis again. So I reckon some more will need to come out sometime soon.
See, I'm fascinated by veterinary dentistry. I've been following Morton, the vet dentist.
Yes, I follow it. Yeah. Really fascinating. Yeah. Although I am jealous that all his patients are
out cold.
Yes.
Yes, amazing. But he does really cool stuff. I mean, he puts composite on teeth to, change occlusion and all sorts. He's, really cool guy.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, talking of the NHS, as you said, and patients having options, what do you think of the new government plan to save NHS dentistry?
The best quote I found was on a thread on For Dentists by Dentists, and someone said, it's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I think that's just such a good way to describe it.
Yes, I think that's very accurate.
What do you think?
Too little, too late. I think a lot of the things that they're sort of promoting are actually things that sort of are already happening. For example, sort of that 20,000 golden hello, which is actually, there's definitely been going on probably for the last 5 years in lots of places. I remember reading a BDJ article on it in the pandemic, pre-pandemic, saying, I think it was like Mid Wales, and they were really struggling, and I think that was 18,000 they were offering then. So
it's nothing new. It's just that they've decided to publicize it now, and they've decided to put more funding towards some patient groups. So it's basically doing a checkup for someone who hasn't seen a dentist for a while. There's an extra 15 quid, which when you own a practice, is nothing towards operating costs. That's fine. But a lot of places, what that's going to mean is that the existing patients just get bumped.
Well, that was one of the first things I thought. I was like, I just don't understand that then people who have been sort of really dedicated to looking after their teeth are sort of actually going to get this really poor end of the deal. And I understand so many people are struggling to get in, but I don't think it's a fair system that they've come up with at all there.
It's not a solution. It's a political solution, isn't it? It's just shocking when you think about the fact that I didn't even realize elections were around the corner, but they're fixing NHS dentistry. And you just think, do we actually want a solution? We've talked about this before, but it's just a shame. It's a slow march, isn't it, to the inevitable?
Yes, yes. I think, yeah, the only real solution is some massive uphaul of almost everything and reassessing everything. Yeah. Again, I think it would be really interesting to talk to someone in who's making some of these policies, to sort of see where they're standing and what the thinking is behind some of them. But yeah, I can't imagine it's going to be before the elections, because it would.
I mean, it's taken since 2006 for someone to stand up to it. The BDA are saying lots now, and better late than never. But actually, yeah, that ship has sailed now. And I think it being in the news is fine, but it's more raising awareness. I mean, greedy dentists, who isn't taking £20,000 for free? Oh, it's £20,000 to go work in the middle of nowhere. Oh, you're tied in for 3 years. Oh, okay. So £20,000 to go do a job that, as we talked about in the last episode, is grueling for so many reasons, away from your family, where you're tied into a contract. I don't really think that that's as appealing as the headlines make it sound.
No. I mean, again, I don't. But calling it back to Brexit, I think that's where a lot of some of these issues, because that's what they said before. A lot of that workforce working in these areas were some European dentists sort of coming over, and they'd worked there for a few years, sort of build up some of that NHS experience, and we've lost that. And then there's not then as many dentists sort of coming through that way to fill it. And it's just, although I will say the one thing I thought was maybe a good idea were those vans. I thought they were quite interesting as being able to get out, sort of more of that outreach, having those dental vans to get to that remote dentistry. But
and that could work really well. I mean, it's funny. Anyone listening who knows me personally might know this story, but I'll call it a family dinner once, because I don't want to give too much away here. But I was at a family dinner for extended family when someone decided, across a table full of people, to tell me about this great idea they have to get this van, a dental van, and go around to millionaires' houses in London, because millionaires don't want to leave their houses apparently, and provide dentistry in their driveway. And I was thinking, this is a much better use of this van than what they were thinking. So yeah. I mean, reaching rural communities is just so important.
Deliveroo dentistry.
I know, yeah. I mean, if anyone wants to build an app for that, yeah. But I guess what we're finding now is, across other parts of the NHS as well, in medicine, in dentistry, the conditions that these jobs are under mean that people are leaving the system. And in dentistry, we've talked about it, there's more private dentistry happening, and there's a move towards that. But in medicine, we're probably just losing really good doctors who are leaving to go abroad. And then because of Brexit, it's even harder to fill their spaces.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. And I think even in dentistry, there's people just leaving dentistry because they just, I think, get so burnt out sometimes with what the current system is, and then they can't even move into maybe a fully private job because they're sort of so done with it and can be so traumatized by it that they just want to do something completely different. And quite often you can't even blame them because of what is going on and that pressure that they are under there.
As you were saying, you spoke to friends and family this week and they were just surprised at how the NHS works. So I guess probably every week we'll talk about another step towards the end of NHS dentistry.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's getting me down. How was the rest of your week?
So yeah, I've had a hectic week, but it's been really good. I'm coming to the end of an ortho case that I'm sort of really, it's been really nice to see. Been working with Helen Rimmer on it, who's fantastic dentist down at Cardiff Bay, and it's been really nice sort of working together. She is such a perfectionist, and it's sort of, yeah, it's amazing sort of to see the detail that sort of she works to. and we're doing some whitening at the moment, but we've taken the top brackets off and we're whitening the top teeth and then left the lower ones on. So it's almost like a half mouth study. It's amazing to see the whitening results in real time, because it is funny. I think when patients come in like the whitening's not working, and you're like, my eyes are like hurting. So actually to see it in one mouth is quite cool to see. You're like, oh, it's definitely working there, and you cannot say it's not. So that's been good. And then I went to an IDOR talk by Sid Gupta last night on preps, and that was really interesting. Took lots of sort of little tips and things away. He's again got a real eye. Some of his photography as well is really gorgeous. So it's amazing sort of seeing some of those tips and tricks. So definitely going to try and implement a couple of them into my work this week.
Actually, I've worked with Sid, and his work is beautiful. And Sid really cares about patients. Like, he really puts a piece of his soul into each piece of work. I think it's knackering for him because of that. Like, and I can see why. But if you speak to any of the nurses, they'll tell you that he is like, incredible. And also, you mentioned Helen. It was funny because Helen was one of the founding members of IDAW, and Helen came. It was something to do with IDAW. We were working together on a project, and she passed by the practice, and she came in. And Helen's amazing because she walks in. She goes, "You should do this and this and this and this," and she left. And I went, "Okay, let's do all of that." And she's been a big part of the development of the practice. She's amazing. So no, that's really cool.
Yeah, she's definitely got that eye. She can really pinpoint, I think, little things there, which is it's fantastic to work with her. And for any listeners, the next IDAW talk I am doing on sustainability. So if anyone wants to come along to that, just visit the IDOR website.
Cool. Do you know when it is?
It's on the 13th of March.
Okay.
I think it's in Cardiff. And if you're not a member, it's only £10.
And it's £50 if you bring a car. Is that right?
Please car share if you can.
Walk and plant a tree on your way, or you're not coming in. Yeah.
Bike 50 miles. So well, to be fair, call out to Theo, the dentist, who at the last one this week, he did cycle there. So
Theo's great with this stuff. I mean, Flo, well done, because your goal and your passion is to raise awareness for sustainability and make dentistry more sustainable. And it's amazing. Since we had our referral day where you gave a talk, you're doing the IDAW talk. You've got more talks booked in.
Yes, I'm doing one with HEIW in May, and then hoping to work with some of the DF schemes on a few things as well. And I'm working as part of the sort of a national steering group looking at healthcare in general and sort of how we're going to make healthcare in general more sustainable. So I'm sort of the dental lead on that. So
awesome.
Really,
well done.
Really cool things.
And thank you for, the amount of plastic, single-use plastic, especially. I know there's a lot of examples of sustainability, but all the little things that have changed. We were just talking about the fact that we use Optrogate for procedures and the fact that we have autoclavable versions of these. And you know what? It just takes one person thinking about this and caring about this, and we can change so many things. So maybe in time we can share pictures via the podcast Instagram page of some of the things that you've implemented, because I think it's so easy. And actually, if someone said to me, do you want to make the practice more sustainable? I'd be like, yeah. If they said how, I'd go, I don't know. So amazing.
Well, I've got, if anyone wants any tips, I've got loads. So I'll try and put some more things out on Instagram as well.
Brilliant.
Because I think that's going to be the key, is everyone working together and it's sharing ideas and moving on from that. Yeah. But that takes us on to today's episode. It's going to be a little bit more of a mishmash of a few topics to get today. But I really wanted to talk about sort of indemnity, dealing with sort of patients that can be a little bit more sort of tricky to deal with, and sort of how we as dentists can sort of protect ourselves, make sure we're staying safe, and sort of record keeping and everything along those lines. First thing I wanted to ask you is, how do you recognise sort of a difficult patient early on?
There's so many little things, isn't there? I used to, because of things that I was told by other dentists, I used to think that when you're speaking to a patient about treatment options, it's an opportunity to pitch to them. I now think of speaking to patients as an opportunity to convince them not to have treatment. And the key with that is tell them all the risks, tell them everything that could go wrong with each of their options. And for me, the key is a patient who is not willing to take on those risks, and even worse, a patient who's not willing to listen to what you are saying. And so I think of it more as it's not a sales opportunity, it's like a date. And you're trying to see if it's a good match. And as soon as you provide any treatment for someone, if you aren't both on the same page, it's a problem. And so sometimes I think people look to have boxes to tick to know that there are red flags. Sometimes it's just that feeling or that little voice going, something doesn't feel right. And I think it's fair, for me, the advice I would give is, it's fair to go, okay, I'm not so sure, and maybe I'm having an off day, maybe they're having an off day. So I tell you what, let's make an appointment in a week and review the treatment options again. But 99% of the time, I'd say that feeling is the red flag. What do you think?
No, I completely agree. Yeah, gut instinct. Obviously, your microbe in your gut there, it's connected to your brain. It definitely knows things. But
so what the bugs look at this patient and go, no, send a signal.
Basically, yeah, I truly believe that. But no, seriously, I think as well also if there's any sort of more patients listening, and actually as dentists, we also do have to be patients as well. Even if you're seeing an absolutely fantastic dentist, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right match. And so yeah, it is like that date thing, is that actually you have to be on the same wavelength and want, talk in this sort of in a similar way sort of about things, I think. And there's really interesting studies as well about how if you sort of relate to someone, then you're more likely to do what they say, which I think is really interesting. I mean, when I'm giving like oral hygiene, I'm always actually trying to connect with someone, whether it be like, oh, you run, I run, and then sort of, so that then they are more likely to listen when I say, this is how you want to brush your teeth, go buy this toothbrush and everything. Because I do think it's, if they can relate to you and you can get that connection, everything's going to go a lot more smoothly there.
So I guess your ability to connect with different types of people will determine your potential patient base.
Yeah.
But actually, it's okay if you can't connect with a lot of people. Just stay safe.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be broad. As long as, I think, it's that comfort level, isn't it? That's going to be sort of really sort of key. So what do you do sort of in terms of when you're collecting data, sort of to make sure that you're sort of covering absolutely everything?
So the few things that we've realized over time and that we've kind of developed into our workflow, the first is that when a patient calls up and they speak to reception, they are told the actual cost of things according to what they're asking. One of the problems is when patients don't trust you. And I think one of the things that can really break trust is like kind of doing the from kind of price on the phone, which sometimes is unavoidable. You can't see a tooth. The receptionist can't necessarily triage that. But having an honest conversation, rather than the from to price. This is the range of prices for this kind of procedure. That actually has a massive effect because firstly, people don't want to turn up and feel either cheated or get embarrassed that they can't afford something. That's what leads to a lot of confrontation right from the beginning, I found. So just really honest conversations before patients even come in. And then when patients come in, that initial consultation appointment, the best tip that I have, the thing that I started doing a long time ago, and I think it works really well, is I record consultations with consent. It's voice recorded, and I ask patients permission. I have a small dictaphone. I mean, they cost nothing. They're 20 quid off Amazon. I've only ever had one person ever say no And for me, that was a huge red flag, because once I explain why I want to record it, look, I want to record it for clinical records, so there's an accurate record of our conversation. But I'm going to send you a copy as soon as we're done. It's even better than a letter. You can listen back to it with your partner, with your family, and you can really think about whether this is a good decision for you. It also keeps a clinician honest, because you have to mention all the pros and cons and treatment options. And if a patient ever feels like you didn't mention something, the beauty is, if a patient comes in and say 5 years ago they had an implant and they have some kind of peri-implant disease, it's been diagnosed elsewhere, they come back and they say, you never said this could happen. I can say, well, I should have said that. I should have said that. So can we just sit down and listen to this? And we listen to it. And if I didn't say it, it's my fault. But most of the time they hear themselves go, yeah, I understand that risk. And it just completely diffuses the situation. So from a consent point of view, but also protecting yourself, I think using that voice recording, and it goes on to the patient records, it's all very confidential. So we use software of excellence, so it gets imported onto there, and it's just as on their records. I think that's been a really good way for me to feel safe and do the patient justice.
No, I think that's a really good tip. I will be going and ordering one.
Yeah, and actually the biggest thing is, when you press record, as soon as it starts recording, you just say, it's now recording our voices. And that shows that everyone in the room is aware that the conversation is being recorded. I don't have a problem. I know some people get really upset if they find out a patient's been recording them with or without consent. I don't have a problem with that. I feel like it doesn't change anything that I do. And actually, everyone recording everything out in the open is I think a really good way to start, a really transparent way to start.
Oh yeah,
So,
no, definitely. And what I think as well, isn't it, that people only hold on to sort of 20% of that information.
Yes.
If that's
Yeah.
the higher
Yep.
end. So yeah, being able to actually then go home and digest lots of it, I think is really useful. It's sort of why when I'm sometimes doing sort of the oral hygiene, you're showing different TPs how to use it, and saying, oh, can I have your phone? I'm going to film you.
Yes.
So they've got it on their record as well. I
Yes.
think that's just so useful.
So much better than sending people home with a link to a video of someone else talking about it, or you talking about it to a general audience, because it's a genuine connection and conversation between two people where you're going, this is what I can do for you. Would it help you? So yeah.
Really useful as well when there's something awkward, and there's nearly always something awkward on some weird bridge or something straight. There's a crown margin that's really, I think it makes it really, much easier to digest at home. In terms of if you so when you do have that, your gut starts going, red flag, how sort of, something I know I've struggled with is that saying no, and how you say no and being confident in saying no. How did you sort of learn to do that?
By saying yes and regretting it.
The hard way.
Honestly, what happens is it's just so awkward, and we want to help people, and it just goes against your nature if you're a certain way. And then you help someone, and actually the worst things that happen, the biggest complaints you get, the biggest worries you have, are always when you try to go out of your way. You know, the example I have is, there was a patient that when I'd first qualified, he had come in for a checkup months and months ago, and I told him that this tooth needs a crown on it, and he'd gone, okay, yeah, I'll do it at some point. And then 4 months later, he called in the morning and said, this tooth is snapped and it's bothering me. It's not painful, but it's kind of bothering my tongue. So it's been 4 months since the advice was given. I had a fully booked day. I was newly qualified. And I said, you know what, book him in at lunch, because I don't want him suffering. And he comes in, and I look at it and I go, oh, there's nothing to build up here. I can smooth the sharp edge, but now the tooth needs to come out. And he went, well, I've come in for nothing. And I was thinking, well, no, I've smoothed the sharp edge for you. And I end up offering to take his tooth out in that lunchtime. It ends up being ankylosed. So for anyone who doesn't know, the tooth is fused to the bone, and I end up not being able to take the whole tooth out. Now this is on the NHS, so there is an NHS fee for this. And I end up getting a complaint. And I just thought, you know what? I really went out of my way to help someone who wasn't helping themselves. And actually I compromised myself, because that there was so many times a line could have been drawn there. And I think cases like that, drawing a line and saying, if you could wait 4 months, I need to wait till I have long enough. And if all I have long enough for is to smooth the tooth, that's okay. And so, yeah, I think the way to say no now, to actually answer your question, is just to be quite upfront about it and to say, look, there are risks to this procedure. I feel like you aren't happy with those risks, but I can't take those risks away. So I think you need to go to someone for this treatment who can provide it without these risks.
Yes.
And a lot of the time people say, okay, I can accept these risks. And sometimes that's okay, but sometimes it's not genuine. And sometimes I'll say, look, I'm not comfortable.
Yes. And it, like you said, it sort of is sometimes, I think, knowing who then to refer to and knowing sort of who's going to have your back in those situations can make that no a lot more comfortable.
Do you mean when you say no to be able to say no, but this person might be able to help you? You know, I feel that if there is a clinical procedure I can't or don't want to provide, but if it's someone not willing to accept risk, I'm now like, why am I putting that on someone else? And why am I then sending this person to someone who they might just have a no from them? So now I just say, well, you'll have to find someone, because I don't know anyone unreasonable enough to agree to this treatment plan without the risks, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Yeah, I think it is definitely, to begin with, I think that is one of the biggest learnings that you get actually in your first few years out of dental school, is when to say no and how to say no. And I think looking back, definitely for me, that's been one of the things that I've progressed, I think, most in over the last few years.
I feel like it's not even something that you stop learning about. I feel like there's still sometimes I think back and I go, oh, I could have spotted that, and it's nothing terrible, but I should have been more clear about this when I saw that red flag and given this person the opportunity to accept this or to walk away. But I think the pressure we put on ourselves, it's normally when a young dentist really wants to do a procedure, and it's not necessarily financially motivated. It's like, I went on this course, I learned this really cool thing. This person might let me do this thing and it would be really cool. And sometimes it's like, that's, I think, a big part of where mentorship comes in. Someone to go,
no,
there'll be another bus in 10 minutes. Just wait for that one. And I think someone who's been through it before is a really good way to avoid these mistakes.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Yes,
they say.
yeah.
Have you ever felt scared, sort of in an appointment?
Like physically threatened? No, I can't say I haven't. I think I've been lucky, but I also think it's because of my gender, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. How about you?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I've had a few appointments where people have become a little bit aggressive, and police have had to be called.
Oh wow.
So, and I think that is always a little bit of that fear, and it's sort of how you're managing a patient in the right way. I mean, it's great that in this country that we always have sort of a dental nurse in the room, so you've got sort of two people there, but there is also that element of actually quite often it is two females there then.
Yeah.
And if you have quite a large aggressive bloke, it can get quite scary.
Do you think that the patients who have been like that were like that because there's two women in the room rather than?
I mean, it's very hard to say.
Yeah.
I think that there can be an element of that. There's definitely, I mean, there definitely still is some biases and some prejudice involved. I've had people definitely sort of say like, oh, you going to get this tooth out, like
you must be one of those people that put your knee on people's chests that I hear about.
Yeah. But also, yeah, so I think it's that classic, some of it's definitely unconscious bias as well, where if you picture a dentist, I think most people would picture a male, even though now I think something like 60% of the dentists are female.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, yeah, there is that element where sometimes, yeah, there is that bias already coming into the room. And then
See, this is why, sorry to interrupt, this is why I don't understand how and why hygienists and therapists work alone. We've never had a hygienist or therapist in this building work without a nurse, because forget the fact that I couldn't do their job without a nurse, but a chaperone when you're dealing with members of the public, strangers in a closed space with sharp objects. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm making it sound scarier than it is. Yeah, it must be terrifying to be physically scared in that closed space. There's nowhere to go.
Yes. Yeah, I think you then learn from it, and again, it's recognizing some of those signs early and sort of knowing how to manage a situation. But maybe it's something that should be discussed a little bit more at dental school, sort of how to diffuse some of those situations.
I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but anything you look back and you wish you had done differently? Any ways that to diffuse, or any ways to keep yourself safe in those situations?
Well, off the top of my head, there's the one where I sent, this happened here, where I sent the nurse for assistance. So then I was left alone, which looking back should have sent a message rather, so that I wasn't then alone. It's hard to say sort of in the moment, because actually in that particular case, I actually think how I was talking at everything, everything was kept quite mild and everything. There wasn't anything where you're discussing really difficult options. Sort of it was from the start quite simple, but maybe with reception teams, sort of warnings. 'Cause I think sometimes when you suddenly say, oh, you've got to have this tooth out, and then people, with patients, it is quite traumatic to suddenly like, oh, I've got to lose a tooth that I wasn't mentally prepared to lose, or something like that.
So this goes back to the first point I made, which is the language that reception use on the phone. Our reception team don't make promises. And if someone calls and says, oh, my tooth is, my crown has come off, I'd like to make an appointment for someone to stick it back on. That's never what the appointment is made for. We can make you an appointment for someone to have a look at it. And actually, you can see why a patient would get distressed if they came in to have something fixed that can't be fixed, because there's so many factors behind this. There's the emotional and psychological, there's the financial, there's so much behind it.
Oh yeah, I think as a patient as well, you're in a very vulnerable situation as a patient. Like, it's not actually nice to be laying back. You've got your mouth open, there's someone you don't know that well sort of actually looking right at your teeth there. So you can understand why actually in that high stress things then do happen. But yeah, again, it's keeping everything, I think, as calm as possible the whole time.
So I guess, there's patient factors that we can't account for. The things that we need to control are the things that are within our control. And I think a big reason that kind of the next thing we're going to talk about is the big reason why a lot of the issues that are occurring in dentistry in the UK at the moment are occurring. And it's to do with complaints and indemnity, isn't it?
Yes. It's that cloud, I think, hanging over
Yes.
everyone all the time and causing extra sort of stress.
Yeah.
There.
And that was kind of like a few years ago, I was tired of having, situations like I explained. The patient would get a refund and an apology from our indemnity. And I feel like that was almost encouraging people to not take responsibility for themselves. It's fair. The whole point of having indemnity is that you're held accountable if you're negligent, because it's not fair on a patient but if they are given options and choose not to take them and something happens, that's just the consequences of life and their own actions. And I was very tired of the indemnity company that I was with at the time. I won't mention them. But everyone can name all of these, They're going, oh, was it this one or this one? But I was tired.
50-50.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I was tired of the way they were dealing with it. And And then insurance-based indemnity came out. So there's discretionary, and then insurance came out. And I jumped on that early. And I know some people moved over slowly and were scared of moving over, and some people still never will. But it's the best thing I've done. And there are people involved in discretionary and in other insurances that will say, well, you know, you haven't read the fine print and if something goes wrong. But I really looked into it, actually. And one of the things that used to be said to us in dental school was, oh, this indemnity is discretionary. So what that means is, let's say someone who's not our member does something wrong. For example, what was said to us was, if a dentist is not with us and is about to get in trouble, and the patient's word is going to be taken over the clinical records, then we will step in even though he's not a member of ours, because it's for the good of our membership that the clinical records come first, which is very logical, but also a huge misrepresentation of what discretionary means. Because when you actually go out there and speak to people, you realize what it means is, it's not about you as an individual. So it's about protecting the membership. And sometimes you are left high and dry for the good of the membership. And what I'd like a system where, and a lot of people liken this to car insurance. I'd like a system where I'm risk assessed on the basis of my history and what I present with, and I am promised cover based on that.
Yes, yeah, I think that makes a lot more sense. And definitely after I started working for you, I ended up swapping over pretty soon after that. And so if you are sort of looking at one of these, what are the things that you think someone should look for?
So firstly, I think you should speak to the people involved in this. There are lots of insurance-based companies now. A lot of them have dentists involved at the heart of them. So speak to them, and they should give you a sales pitch. They should tell you what's good about their insurance, right? Because we're not going to get into the terminology here, but there's all these nuances like runoff cover, and there's things to do with whether it's claims occurring, or there's so much terminology around this, and different things suit different people. And so what I would say is, don't go ask your friend, which one are you with? Are they good? Is that what you did? Yeah. You did that
I did.
I picked the right one for us. Don't worry.
Okay.
But no. But I think people should phone up and speak to people, and the people who have the time of day for you and will explain things will help you choose one that suits you. And it's about understanding there's no perfect product in any insurance market, and it's about kind of choosing the risk that you're taking. But the good thing is now we have more and more choice. Like when you renew your car insurance every year, these are things that I think you should review, because gone are the days. I mean, I remember a few years qualified, I received a quote for £12,000 for my indemnity, and I was a few years qualified. I was like, no, I don't have a problem. Like, aside from this one guy who didn't want to come in for 4 months, we're pretty good. So yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot. When do you think you should use your indemnity?
This is what's really interesting. So when I left a discretionary indemnity for an insurance, I had to get a letter of good standing, which they really stalled on giving me as well. I mean, but they say to you, oh, you should call us. Any little thing, call us for advice. It's not going to go against you. And they were, on that letter of good standing, they logged calls for advice that were even, you could go as far as to say they were hypothetical situations. I was worrying about things, and I thought I'd better speak to them about it. And that really upset me, because I thought, you know what, you're using these things. I would say, go to your indemnity will say, come to us with everything. That's not bad advice. And actually, if you have good indemnity, it shouldn't be held against you. It's smart to get advice before you make decisions. But I wouldn't call them because you're worried about something that hasn't happened or something a patient has said. But as soon as you have a mention from a patient that they're upset, whether it's verbal or written, it's good to speak to your indemnity, because they might have some good advice about how to diffuse the situation as well. And you know, good indemnity companies will reward you for that rather than punish you for it.
Yeah. Does it ever affect your fee?
Not to date. I think with discretionary, I can't say I feel like it did, but with insurance-based ones, I feel like they kind of go, you know what, you're a safe driver. Because every time you're about to knock someone on a bike, you call us and say, should I hit them? And we go, no, don't do it, right? That's kind of what it feels like. Where they get to be involved before it escalates. And especially if, like, you know, your track record they say on average at one point, you were likely to get a complaint every year, like the average dentist in the UK. And I never had that average. I don't know many people that do, but it means that some people are getting a lot of complaints. And so I would say, yeah, call them and speak to them. They'll keep you safe.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. Something that I've actually like to sometimes do is, you know, you can go on the GDC thing and it shows you what people have been.
The gossip pages.
Yeah, basically called in for or struck off for. And it is interesting, I think, looking at the trends of what complaints are about. And I think there's a lot sort of now about sort of that not being explained a risk.
Yeah, so this is the thing. If you're doing 10, 15-minute checkups and you're having to talk about root canals and crowns in that time, it's just not possible. You know, you need time to discuss these things, or you need to be referring to someone who's going to take the time to have these conversations. Patients don't complain generally because something goes wrong that was a risk of their procedure. I think they complain because they either don't like you or they feel you don't care. And if you don't care, you shouldn't be in this job. I think you're doomed to fail in that sense. But we know that it's Apple's terms and conditions again. You can give them a sheet of paper with all the risks, and actually you should say to them, read this, and you should mention it to them. But actually, some people are waiting for you to do something. And actually, if you care about all of your patients, and if something is genuinely concerning to them, even if it's something that you think is trivial. You had a case where someone came in because after a cosmetic appointment, there was a tiny dot on a tooth still, right? I mean, it was microscopic, but you didn't go, well, it's just a dot. I don't know why you've come back. You went, oh yeah, let me get that dot. There we go. That looks great. And the patient went, oh, thank you. That looks great. And actually, you know, we have 100 sliding doors moments with these patients, and it's just about addressing concerns. It's about not fobbing anyone off. And if you feel like their concerns are constant and unreasonable, that's the flag not to carry out the treatment, right? But once you do the treatment, just if someone's worried, if someone's having a problem, you just got to keep on top of it or offer referral.
Oh, definitely. When I did my before getting into dental school, when you do those observations, I did it with the dentist down in Portsmouth, and I always remember him saying, he was like, as long as patients like you, like, you'll be fine. He was like, you can be an absolutely rubbish dentist, but if they like you, it doesn't, that you'll be fine. He was like, you could be an incredible dentist, but if they don't like you, that's when there's problems.
Yeah. It's fun. The hardest job to start is one where you're taking over a list from a dentist who wasn't clinically very good, but was the nicest person. And this is also where, you know, in terms of staying safe, following guidelines and protocols and then documenting them accordingly, systematically, is so key. Because if it becomes about someone not liking you, you need to be able to prove that you did everything you could in their best interest according to clinical guidelines.
I definitely think nowadays there's so much we've got at our disposal for that good record keeping, sort of taking photos, whether it's with those intraoral cameras or DSLR ones, as scanners, which we talked about as well.
Yes.
So you've got sort of records of that.
Our nursing team take full photographic clinical records of every single patient. And we have patients go, oh, I don't want my photos taken. We go, okay, you'll have to find a practice that's willing to treat you with that, because it's a bit like you not filling out your medical history here. We need the full set of records.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's really good reflective practice, like taking it, that, you know, if you're doing a filling, during the filling, but actually as well, you've got it there. You can show them, like, there was a crack here, we had to take this out, this wasn't expected here, so we moved this. And quite often patients actually really like that, but also for your records, you can show absolutely step by step what you've done in order to sort of save a tooth.
Well,
which
I
think
have a
is really useful.
4K camera on my light from Plan Mecca. It's called the Solana camera, and I record my surgeries. So it's just there. This kind of the records are there, and you know that it's always good to be watched and be watching yourself.
Yes, I think it's scary having someone sort of over your shoulder, but it makes you step up.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to my husband about this in relation to running, and he was like, it's really weird that when you go running with other people, suddenly as human beings, we want to you run better, you run that little bit faster because ultimately
Just
we want to
imagine
fit
Tom
in.
racing all his friends on the road.
He only runs with me. It was me. I went for a run with CDF runners, and it was So you just run that little bit faster, and yeah, I think human beings, we all want to fit in, but yeah, if you do have someone over your shoulder, and like we said before, actually you've always got a nurse over your shoulder, which I think does keep you that little bit more accountable.
Yes.
Anyway, what do you think of some of these more, I'm going to say modern now, because I know some of them have been out for quite a while, things like Heroku for notes?
Yeah. So I use Heroku. I really like it. Um, I feel like for me the voice recording kind of has superseded the importance of the written notes, because I start my written notes by saying voice recorded with consent, and the voice recording's there. And actually, AI has meant that you can just get a transcript if you wanted, and that should be the notes. But Heroku means that the beauty of Heroku is I have my clinical notes laid out in a way where my nurses can click as we go, but also they can then prompt me if there's anything in that list that we didn't do. So that's what I really like about it. And it means that I don't leave anything out. It might be sometimes you might, for example, look at someone's smile line, but not write anything down. So this means that if I haven't called something out in a consultation, my nurses will say, what's the smile line like? And it means that things are both being looked at and recorded properly. So I really like using Heroku. I think Hannah, who started Heroku, she's a dentist, and she's a wet finger dentist, so she always stayed in dentistry. And I think she really, when you speak to her, you see the passion, but also the fact that she's really tried to create something that is for clinicians, and she's a clinician. And I think there's a lot of uses for it. The I I place less importance on it now because I have my workflows and I'm in one building. But at one point when I was traveling to 7 practices, that was a godsend, Heroku. It was so important. And I think you're in multiple practices. Cass comes here and is in multiple practices. She uses Heroku. And the quality of the clinical notes, I'm not going to name names, but of the clinicians who use Heroku and those who don't, is...
Well, I actually don't use it at the moment. I definitely am thinking of doing it. I've got quite good, and I know, again, with Indemnity, there's sort of, some people are against templates and everything, but I sort of use my template a bit like you, where it's sort of my nurse can read it, and then I can go through and they can be like, oh, what do you want to write for this one? And it is that really good prompt.
The beauty of Heroku is, rather than you going to go type it out or your nurse having to type it out, you have lots of options. So and phrase the way you speak. That's the beauty. I say things to patients a certain way, and we can phrase our options in that same way.
If you do sort of get something that's a little bit difficult, you're like, I'm going to do this, but it's got really high risks. How often do you get sort of a patient to sign an extra consent form?
Oh, I don't. We either get each other or we don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I record our voices. I say, look, this is a Hail Mary, or this is a high risk of not working. Do you want to try it? Because I don't want to put you through this without you understanding that. And there's no, that a lot of, I say this about most contracts, they're not worth the paper they're written on. And I keep saying that. Honestly, if you do something and a patient signed a piece of paper, they still could come after you for want of a better way of saying it. So yeah, I don't bother. I think it's actually quite abrasive. Someone shoving a piece of paper in front of you saying, sign this to say that what I'm going to do isn't going to work. Yeah, I think the honest conversations, it being well documented, and especially the voice recordings, I can't stress that enough. It just means everyone's on the same page.
Enough. What would you do, sort of, you're in a work environment and maybe things haven't been sort of going to plan, but you're not feeling supported by sort of the other people you're working with? sort of what do you do when you're feeling really uncomfortable in that work environment?
So I know it's a cop out, but you need to not work in environments like that. They're not good for us. Just like you need to find a good match for your patient, you need to get along. You need to have a good philosophical match, an ethical match with your practice. And if it's over one situation, fine, it could just be a difference in opinions. But if you're feeling put at risk where you're working by whatever it is, because it's a very non-specific question, then I think you need to consider working somewhere else.
I think it's really, I know this is one of the issues with sort of that, how long, once you give your contract and you're having to stay in a practice afterwards. And I think this is where things can get sort of a little bit messy. And then sometimes if they want you to finish extra cases, and I do think it's quite difficult in dentistry almost to fully leave.
Yeah. It's a messy divorce when you leave a place and you're a clinician. Yeah.
And I think, particularly if you've not had that support, there's a lot, I think, that can go into sort of people's mental well-being during that time.
Yes.
It is really, I think it is a really difficult situation. It's sort of knowing where your boundaries are and setting your boundaries, and then looking for sort of those support networks outside to get you through that, I think is so important as well.
I think most dentists have been through that. And so I think if you were to put a post anonymously on like mental dental or a group like that, I think so many people would reach out. And there's so much collective wisdom about most people going, you know what, just ignore that. That's kind of what, but when you're in it, it's so difficult. So, and it's all too common, and it's really sad. Every time someone has moved on from this practice, we wish them well. We try and look after things as if they're because these decisions aren't personal. Life isn't about the practice owner or the practice philosophy. Sometimes people have other things going on, and I think it's just to say that all of us need to remember that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I think that leads you on to sort of the next thing is that living, sorry, I'm going to get this the wrong way around, working to live, not living to work.
Yeah.
And having said that, life outside of dentistry and that work-life balance, I think, is so important as well.
I agree, and that means different things to different people, and that balance sits in different places. But if you're not in a mentally positive place and you're not enjoying work, then it might be that you're in the right place doing the right thing, but you're doing it too much or too little.
Oh yes, no, definitely. And it can sometimes be as well, you've just got those pressures outside of work at that point that then is feeding into sort of where the headspace you're in then at work. And I think it is, I mean, it's for people in any industry, getting that balance right, I think is sort of one of the keys really to general happiness. And I know for me, one of the big things that I do to sort of keep myself level is exercise. Probably a little bit of an addict when it comes to exercise, but yeah, I just love running. And I know that if I've not gone for a run, I'm not as good a person.
Yeah. And so like I talked about this before, but I have a 7-day working week and a 7-day weekend. And I found that I wasn't sure what my balance is. And I used to think, okay, working 4 days, it's like, oh, this isn't working. But actually, spending a few hours in the morning doing non-clinical work, spending time with my daughter, doing some exercise, doing something like taking the dogs for a walk, having a good meal that you prepare yourself. That start to my day means that I come in and I love work and I love seeing my patients. But that has taken development, right? Like that takes time to figure out what your balance is, what time of the day you want to be doing things. Whether some people want to do 3 or 4 really long days and have 3 or 4 days off, and that's okay as well. That kills me. So I guess the other thing is everyone's different, and don't be too judgmental of yourself or others. Don't be harsh. Don't try and feel like you have to do what everyone else is doing. Just do what feels right. and see if you can find your balance, because then you'll actually enjoy your work a lot more.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I think it's also ensuring like your team has that balance as
Yes.
well. Definitely as clinicians, sort of, you do have that leadership role. So sometimes it is worth sort of a nudge sometimes to just be like, actually, let's make sure everyone is eating lots of nutritious sort of healthy things,
Yes.
keeping brains functioning and everything. And I think then it makes everyone's days that a little bit easier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, one thing our team, our nursing team have and reception team sit with our practice manager Alex every morning, and they have a meeting where they look ahead at the day and just plan their day. But they start their morning meeting with gratitude, and they talk about something they're thankful for at home and something they're thankful for at work, and that really sets the tone. And actually, gratitude is something I started doing. I don't even know when, it was a few months ago. And it's like starting your day with what you're thankful for, and it really makes you. I was like, this is a silly thing to do, but I'll give it a go because someone was saying how good it is. And even talking about the things you're worried about, anything you resent, and you know what it does? It just puts everything into perspective. And I think actually these habits that make us positive and make us team players and make us thankful for what we have, it means that we all try and help each other get through the day, and we have a much better day as a team.
I think as well, when everyone's sort of acting then on sort of that baseline, it actually makes it easier than recognizing when someone isn't in the right headspace as well.
Yes.
And being able to then give them that support in some way. I think you're very good at sort of supporting the whole team and recognizing sort of actually maybe someone needs to go a little bit early because everything else that's going on, and that's actually going to be for the better for the team. Yeah, I do think that's something. There's obviously a lot of nuance to it, and it takes a lot of years of practice in sort of recognizing that in others and how to then be there for someone.
I think it also is because we have a team that deserves to be treated like that. It's taken years to get to a point where no one takes advantage of goodwill. Actually, everyone works way harder than they should. Poor Haley's not going to like me mentioning this, but yesterday I walked into my surgery and I needed to use the computer, and Haley was sitting at the computer. And I said, Haley, are you using the computer? And she said, And I went, is that yes? Yes, you're using the computer, but you don't want to say no to me. And she said, no, if I'm honest, I just wanted to sit down for 5. And I was like, why don't you go sit down in the staff room and have a cup of tea? And Haley hasn't been with us for as long. She's our newest nurse. And she's kind of like, oh, I didn't know I was allowed to do that. I went, what, to like sit down and have a cup of tea because you work really hard and there's nothing that you have to be doing at this minute. But the fact is that we have a team that we almost have to force them to slow down and take a break, which is such a privilege and such a nice thing. But yeah, I think we owe it to each other and to our teams to actually make sure that we're not burning people out on principle or on old habits.
Definitely. And if anyone is struggling, I think there are some really useful things to sort of point people towards. I know for me, I've gone through therapy a few times actually. And I would say as well, if anyone, I think there's a lot, I think it's positive now that actually it isn't so sort of like, oh, you're in therapy. But one thing that I definitely would also recommend is actually a bit like with a dentist, is shopping around. You're going to fit with some people and not others. Yeah. I've had therapists over the years that I clicked with and therapists that I did not click with. Yeah. And it is worth sort of looking around. There's a really good website where you can, I can't remember what it's called now. It's the therapy.
Get them to sponsor us.
Yeah, no, effectively, you sort of put in your area, the areas you want, and it gives you sort of a whole list, and you can sort of then go through and contact different people. So yeah,
that's awesome.
I'd recommend that to people.
Maybe you could share that on our socials.
Yes, yeah, no, I will do.
Because I think, I think the taboo around looking for help and powering through things, and it's just dated now. And actually, everyone in our industry, but clinicians especially, have a lot of pressure that they put on themselves, that's put on them by practice, by patients. And it's really important that no one feels like they have to power through anything. It's not necessary.
Definitely. We'll wrap up in a second. I've just got a couple of questions from the listeners. One was actually, I thought it was quite interesting. How do you motivate a patient that can't take responsibility for their dental health?
Won't take responsibility.
Won't.
Yeah.
It was phrased as can't.
Yeah. I think you're very good at this. I think you connect with people and you find a way to connect what you're asking them to do to their goals. The fact is you'll never have 100% on that. And especially if what you do, you're working with perio. Essentially, people then won't be motivated, won't see change, and will drop off. It's a lot like, I'd liken it to, I, for the last few months, have been seeing Shauna for my personal training, and she's amazing. And some people will see her for a bit, they won't do what she says, they won't see results, and they'll stop seeing her, and it's the same thing, right? So you have to want to achieve goals. And essentially, the people that don't will just tail off. But you have to take the time, I think, to connect with them and make that little effort. Like you said, you talked to them about, I'm guessing you talked to them about running, about being vegan, about sustainability, you know, all the things no one knows about you. No, I'm teasing, but it can be anything. It can literally be anything. You know, I'm grew up in Kenya. I don't understand rugby. I don't like the rain, and I find a way to connect with people in Wales. So I think
How?
yeah. What do we have in common? But people are people, right? And people have family and they have things they worry about. And actually, you know what? Giving people a chance to speak so they can open up a little bit about their concerns, their fears. And I ask a lot in one appointment, whatever appointment it is. Do you have any questions? Just keep leaving openings there. And some people you just will never get anything from. But I think it's a good way to start.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Next question. I don't know if you do want to do a name drop here, but someone has said, which indemnity would you actually recommend?
So I'm with TDS and Taylor Defense Services, and I really like them, right? But I know a few people who work with different indemnity providers, and I really respect these people. And I know Neil Jaswal started an indemnity company. I'm sorry, Neil, if you're listening. You're probably not. But it's one of the newer insurance companies, and you can look him up. Neil's a really nice guy. Gives really honest advice as well. There are a few. Honestly, like for me, discretion. Like I don't care if I'm allowed to say this or not. Discretionary indemnity that is feeding shareholders and protecting members. I mean, the price is going to keep going up and up and up. People are going to keep leaving, and at the end, your discretionary company is not going to have any money left to protect you, and then they're going to choose to drop you. Everyone can write in and tell me I'm wrong. I don't care. So find a good insurer.
Fair enough. And lastly, how do you recognise when something is affecting your mental health?
Oh, wow. So I think over time I've gotten better at recognizing it. I think I'm lucky that I have a lot of good people around me who might recognize it. And if people keep asking me if I'm okay, then I know there's a problem. But also just kind of gauging your mood, taking the time every day for me to just the gratitudes. And so I actually, you know, I might read out the things that I look at every morning, because I think these are really helpful. Actually, Aston asked me for a copy of these, and I sent them to him the other day because I was telling him about how useful this exercise is. And essentially, the list of 5 things. So first, 5 gratitudes, things to strive for, fears or resentments, plans for the day, and things to watch out for. And you go through that list when you wake up, and you'll notice your baseline is different on certain days. And that becomes one of your things to look out for. Or one of your things to strive for might be to take some time for quiet reflection, or to go for a walk, exercise, eat better, sleep earlier, whatever it is. So I think what we have to do is we have to take the time to listen to ourselves, is my advice. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. Some little things that I do sort of when I know, so it's not really recognizing it, but when I know that I am feeling that little bit overwhelmed, I definitely get quite a few physical symptoms, like my heart will start going, so that warm feeling and things. One thing I do is actually just covering my eyes, sitting in sort of, you're putting yourself in the dark a little bit, and just, you know, really focusing on the breath. I think that just really helps calm things down. And then another thing that me and my husband do is that the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you just sort of stop and you say 5 things that you can see around you, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can sort of feel, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So you go through all of your senses.
Very good.
It would be very hard to do it in a different order, but
If you can taste 5 things, I would be impressed.
Something else is going on. But I think it just really makes you sort of focus and dial down. And I think that just really sometimes can take, and I do it in surgery even sometimes when things go really, and you're just trying to bring it back, sort of almost step back from the dentistry, so that then you can sort of go back into it. I think that can be really useful.
That's really good advice.
Well, thank you so much for today. It's been a little bit of a longer episode there. And thank you to everyone that's listened. If anyone wants to reach out with any sort of future topic suggestions or any questions on anything, send us a message on at Pearls at Dental Podcast. Thank you, Aly, for your time there.
Thank you, Flo. And don't forget, if you're listening, you can't see me looking at the camera, but thanks to producer Simon, these episodes are also on YouTube with a pretty cool setting of the practice behind us. And please subscribe, like, and rate the show, whether it's podcast or YouTube, because that will help other people find us.
Aly, why did you invest in the Navident dynamic navigation system?
It's incredible. It brings our safety and accuracy up for patients. Here's a tracker that we use. And thanks to Rob from the Dental Imaging Company, it's been great support and so easy to set up. I see why so many people go to him for their digital imaging, 3D or 2-dimensional, and also all their surgical supplies like Ustamed screws. Rob's been incredible, and I'd highly recommend working with him.
Aly, why do you use Southern implants?
I love these implants. Brilliant. I have options like coaxis, which 38% of implants that are used by Southern are coaxis, which means that 38% of the time, if you don't have coaxis angle correction at implant level, you're compromising on your treatment plan. On top of that, soft bone implants for the pterygoids, as well as the max implants, immediates for molars, can save having zygomatic implants. Definitely the way to go.
Aly, can you name everything in the practice that's made by W&H?
Ooh, off the top of my head, all of our handpieces, our sterilization equipment, my implant motor, the PiezoMed, they're an incredible company to work with because they're an Austrian company that focus on hygiene, and we know from studies that patients care most about hygiene. To top it all off, the support we get from them is amazing. They don't actually supply the equipment, but they provide the support. Now that's true support.
Aly, what's that you're holding?
Well, this is a burr box from Crown Dental Burrs, and it has Dr. Flo King's name on it. And the reason we've implemented this in the practice is that Paul has the rota system, so his great burrs are kept in order. That means you can ask your nurse for a number of burr, which means you'll always get the same burr, and the rota system means you'll never run out of burrs. So it's definitely worth the investment, and it's not nearly as dear as you might think for something this good.